Today we hear that perennial question from Jesus. Who do you say that I am? After 2,000 years of history with the knowledge of and the studies and learnings about Jesus, we may come up with responses that show that we are just as clueless as the apostles back then. For even though Peter gives the right answer, he doesn't know what the right answer means. For immediately after Jesus tells Peter that he has answered correctly, Peter tries to keep Jesus from following through with his mission when he will be led to his persecution, death, and resurrection. When we try to answer Jesus' question, we may use flowery language and special titles and grandiose names for him, all of which Jesus would reject. He did not come to be adored and glorified. He came to preach the good news to the poor, recovery of sight to the blind, to set captives free. You know all of those things which he read about from the prophet Isaiah in the synagogue. And yet we have a tendency to overlook his real message in favor of popular imagery, which looks a lot prettier and more glamorous than what serving the poor looks like. Today we remember a saint who served the poor in his life, St. Vincent de Paul. He initially started out his life as a priest because he thought it would give him a comfortable life. It was through the efforts of a countess that led him to work among the poor, the vassals and tenants of the country people, and among imprisoned galley slaves. He founded an order called the Vincentians, priests who take vows of poverty, chastity, obedience, and stability. He, along with St. Louise de Marillac, founded the Daughters of Charity, whose convent is the sick room, whose chapel is the parish church, whose cloister is the streets of the city. Vincent founded several hospitals, collected relief funds for the victims of war, and ransomed over 1,200 galley slaves from North Africa. By temperament, Vincent was a very irritable person, easily provoked to anger, and by his own words said, except for the grace of God, he would have been hard and repulsive, rough and cross. Yet he became a tender and affectionate man, very sensitive to the needs of others. He himself did not start the Society of St. Vincent de Paul, which we are familiar with today. It was founded by an admirer of his, Blessed Frederick Ozanam, 175 years after the death of St. Vincent. It's not an easy life to be poor. We don't find many people clamoring to lead a life of poverty and need. Nor is it an easy life to minister to the poor. Again, people are not beating down the doors of the organizations which tend to the needs of the poor. In the words of St. Vincent, though, even though the poor are often rough and unrefined, we must not judge them from external appearances, nor from the mental gifts they seem to have received. On the contrary, if you consider the poor in the light of faith, then you will observe that they are taking the place of the Son of God, who chose to be poor. We also ought to have the same spirit and imitate Christ's actions. That is, we must take care of the poor, console them, help them, support their cause. Even as we begin our fundraising campaign to build our new church, let us never forget our primary mission to be disciples of Jesus Christ, the Son of God, who was sent to preach good news to the poor.